This is The Listening Tube.
Hello, thank you for putting your ear to the listening tube. I'm your host, Bob Woodley. On this episode, we'll hear from Zolal Habibi, member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. But first,
Not the headlines.
I would first like to point out the shameful behavior of the governor of Minnesota and the mayor of Minneapolis. They have actively encouraged citizens to interfere with federal law enforcement actions, putting themselves and the agents in danger. These two office holders are using their positions to foment violence, then claiming it's the federal government that's causing all the chaos. Both of these men should resign immediately. Here's Governor Tim Walz in a televised statement to the people of Minnesota.
ICE agents are going door to door, ordering people to point out where their neighbors of color live. They're pulling over people indiscriminately, including U.S. citizens, and demanding to see their papers. And at grocery stores, at bus stops, even at our schools, they're breaking windows, dragging pregnant women down the street, just plain grabbing Minnesotans and shoving them into unmarked vans, kidnapping innocent people with no warning and no due process. Let's be very, very clear. This long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. Instead, it's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of Minnesota by our own federal government.
Governor Walz, stop lying to your people. None of what you said is true. It's your fault that Minneapolis is in chaos right now.
And if that wasn't enough,
There's another politician or two who should also resign, specifically Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. Senator Kelly has used his office as a pulpit to sow distrust and hopefully make service members doubt their chain of command through a video of himself and other politicians that the media is referring to as a mere reminder that service members don't have to follow unlawful orders. As you may know, the Pentagon investigated and is following up with procedures that may ultimately result in Kelly being demoted in rank and a reduction of his retirement pay. Kelly maintains that the Secretary of War nor the Commander-in-Chief get to decide what Americans in this country get to say about their government. And that's true. For average, everyday Americans. But the circumstances are different if you're a retired naval officer, or for anyone in the military. What a lot of people don't realize is that when you volunteer to serve in the United States Armed Forces, you give up some of the rights you swear to protect for the rest. One of those freedoms you lose is, to a great extent, your freedom of speech. Captain Kelly knew this. Senator Kelly forgot. You're probably thinking, but Bob, he only told service members to not obey unlawful orders. What's wrong with that? Well, no service member needs to be reminded of that. The now infamous video was merely performative. Senator Kelly and the other contributors were just grandstanding, trying to provoke a reaction, make some waves. And it's true, there's nothing illegal about reminding someone of something they already know. But the media only reminds us that the video was only reminding service members about unlawful orders without reminding us about what the rest of the video said. It said, "We want to speak directly to members of the military." In fact, it was Kelly whose part was used for that very phrase. And then Elisa Slotkin follows up with the premise of, "We know you're under enormous stress and pressure right now." Really? Are they? By the way, she's also being investigated because of the video. When Senator Kelly appears again, he says, This administration is pitting our uniformed military, with Slotkin finishing the sentence by adding, and intelligence community professionals, with a third person finishing the sentence with, against American citizens. Allow me to put that sentence together for you. This administration is pitting our uniformed military and intelligence community professionals against American citizens. The video goes on to claim that, right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad, but from right here at home. This video isn't just some innocent reminder to not follow unlawful orders, as the press wants you to believe. They neglect to also remind you of what the rest of the video says. It's a call for mutiny. All of the people in the video should be treated as such. Unfortunately for Captain Kelly, he's the only one still subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Senator Kelly has filed a lawsuit in civilian court to stop the Pentagon from going forward with judicial proceedings against Captain Kelly. Perhaps Senator Kelly forgot that civilian justice and military justice work independently of each other. Regardless, Kelly's lawyers claim he's being denied his free speech rights, which, as I've already pointed out, you relinquish as a member of the military. They also claim that if Kelly's punishment proceeds, it will give the executive branch power over the speech of the legislature. That's only true if the entire legislature was retired military. Kelly himself claims that all retired military could be threatened in the same manner if they say something the president doesn't like. Well, Senator Kelly, there is no president who will like when members of Congress call for a mutiny. And if one of them is retired military calling on current members to rebel, then that goes above and beyond your free speech and doesn't affect anyone else who's retired military and has a gripe. You crossed the line, Captain Kelly. All of your comrades need to be punished. But you're in a unique situation. You had a choice to make, Captain. You chose to file a lawsuit, or the equivalent of being set adrift in a lifeboat. We'll see where you end up if you endure the journey. Just remember, there's still time to climb back on board, even if you eventually end up walking the plank.
The listening tube will return at the speed of sound. Send email to thelisteningtube@outlook.com.
My guest today, Zolal Habibi, is an Iranian human rights activist and a prominent voice for justice, democracy, and women's rights in Iran. She serves on the Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, the NCRI, where she advocates globally for a free, secular, and democratic Iran. Zolal spoke with me from the NCRI headquarters in Paris, France. Were you born in Iran?
Unfortunately, I am part of the generation that never had the chance to see Iran. My parents came to the U.S. before the revolution, so I was born and raised in the U.S., and I've never been to Iran.
Do you have friends, relatives in Iran that you stay in touch with?
Yes, I do, and also we have a very extensive network inside of Iran, so we are in contact with Iran, with the situation in Iran on a daily basis. And the reality is that despite the fact that I've never had the chance to actually visit Iran, I could sincerely say that there hasn't been a day practically in my life that I haven't thought about the people of Iran and what is going on there. So that is why I have actually dedicated 25, 26 years of my life to freedom in Iran.
You are a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Is that the correct name of your organization?
Yes, it is.
Now, why are you a member of the NCRI, and what are the goals of the organization?
Well, the NCRI is actually it's like the parliament in exile of the Iranian resistance. It is a parliament in exile with over 500 members, 52% of which are women, and it represents different people from different beliefs, different walks of life, who have come together with only one goal in mind, and that has been to create a secular democratic republic in Iran and to be able to overthrow the current regime. It was formed in July 1981, about 1 month after Khomeini ordered for the regime to open fire on peaceful protesters on June 20th, 1981. And the reality is that when you look at the history of Iran, especially since the 1979 revolution till now, the first protest uprising that we saw that really was a turning point in the history of Iran, in the history of fighting with this regime, was on June 20th, 1981. So right now, a lot of people are saying that we feel those days are repeating themselves in a way. What we witnessed when it comes to the brutalities of the regime, we haven't seen things that are being carried out right now on the streets since 1980s. But in the 1980s, this is exactly what Khomeini turned to be able to keep his grip on power. It was suppression inside of Iran and executions, public execution, mass executions. And that was how the regime was able to keep its grip on power. So with that mentality, the regime was able to suppress a lot of the turmoil inside of Iran. With the end of the Iran-Iraq War in 1988, Khomeini felt that his days would be numbered because he didn't have the excuse of a war anymore. And that's when he carried out the 1988 massacre, where 30,000 political prisoners were executed in a matter of 5-6 weeks. And right now, people inside of Iran are calling what we're seeing these past few days in Iran the third massacre. So the first was early 1980s, 1981 specifically, 1981, 1982. The second is 1988, and the third is what we are seeing right now on the streets inside of Iran.
When and how did you become aware of the plight of the people of Iran?
Well, that goes back to my childhood practically, but my father, he was a prominent writer and a human rights activist. So I became aware of the human rights situation in Iran when I was very young. I think I was about 4 years old, the first time that I met people who were victims of torture, who had been able to escape Iran. They had come to testify at the US Congress and at the United Nations in New York. And they actually stayed at our house for about 2 weeks. And that was when I first saw with my own eyes, the cruelty of the regime. But I always thought that that was what is happening in Iran, and we are living here in the US, so we're safe and sound. And there was that distance, even though I considered myself to be very lucky because I knew that children my age in Iran, how they were suffering, even at 4. I remember one of the people that, as I said, was a victim of torture that I had met. He had a daughter who was 1 year older than me, and I kept on making that connection. What is she going through? Her dad was in prison, tortured severely, then was able to escape. Now her father is abroad, but she's inside of Iran. Like that whole, it might be complex for a child, but that was like one of the things that, I remember feeling those things and seeing those things and, connecting with it. So to me, that man was like my hero. I always thought of him as a hero. I still do to this day, for everything that he has been through and everything that he continues to do as a member of the Iranian resistance today. But as I said early on, I found out that the regime sees no borders. In 1988, my father was killed by the Iranian regime. And as I mentioned, that summer, the regime had 30,000 political prisoners executed in Iran. Yes, I think that just changed my perspective of things. And from that moment on, I always felt like I have a responsibility and I can't be passive. I can't allow the regime to have the upper hand in a way. I always took a lot of pride in the fact that my parents were both so dedicated to the cause for freedom in Iran. I've always said that I think they served as the greatest role models for me, even though even as a child, I was separated from both of them. My father was killed, and then my mother joined the resistance. And so, for our safety and security, we were sent back to the US, but my mother continued to fight in the resistance. And I think that they taught me what's important in life, not with words, but with their own actions. And I think that's what's so valuable. And so from then on, this fight has been part and parcel of my life. And it continues to be so more and more every day. And I think that finally, after over 4 decades, we are seeing that glimmer of hope and the fact that the Iranian people really feel like we have reached the final phase in the overthrow of this regime.
Where was your father when he was killed?
My father was, as I said, he was a writer, so he was working on a book and he was speaking to different people. At that time, he was in the border area of Iran and Iraq with the Iranian resistance, and he was killed there. So he was killed in the border area of Iran and Iraq in Kermanshah.
Has your life ever been in danger because of your advocacy for government reforms in Iran?
Well, yes. The reality is that the Iranian regime, as I said, sees no borders when it comes to executions and eliminating its dissidents. Just for your information, the Iranian regime has carried out over 500 terrorist attacks abroad, outside of Iran. And for the most part, their target has been members affiliated with the Iranian resistance. In 2018, normally the National Council of Resistance of Iran holds an annual gathering. We would hold it normally here in Paris. And there was an attempted terrorist attack on our gathering. There were 100,000 people in attendance and over 500 dignitaries from around the world. Fortunately, that was unfoiled and the plot was not carried out. But if it had been, it would have been the greatest terrorist attack on European soil after World War II. So that's the extent of it. Time and time again, the Iranian regime has targeted the members of the NCRI and the MEK to try to eliminate them in whatever form and capacity it can.
Well, certainly the Iranian leadership has other problems right now. Demonstrations are thriving in just about every corner of Iran. Thousands are reported to have been killed so far. The Ayatollah is reported to be in hiding if he's even still in the country. The internet's been shut down. Some phone calls are getting through. What are you hearing from the people you know who are there now?
The reality is that, as you said, the death toll has been very high in the thousands. We are still trying to gather all that information because, as you said, it's day 5 of the internet shutdown in Iran. Since yesterday, some phone calls have been connected, but it's very limited and it's under control. So it's not very easy for people to still communicate with the outside world. So we're gathering all that information. But what the message that is coming through, and I think this is something that's really important, is the fact that we see the people's defiance in their continuation. The regime has started a bloodbath, really. There's a massacre going on right now as we speak in Iran, but the people of Iran are standing steadfast. They're not giving in, they're not giving up, they're continuing and they're fighting. I think what is most important, and this is one of the most, I think, distinctive characteristics of this uprising that we are seeing, is the fact that you see the rebellious youth and the resistance units throughout Iran who are on the offensive now. They are the ones who are disarming the suppressive forces. They are targeting centers of repression, and they are standing united, supporting one another. They are trying to release people who are being arrested on the streets. They organize together, and you see that structure in the protests. You see the fact that everyone is united on the streets together. The protest began with the issue of the collapse of the economy. It started with the strike in the bazaars. You have to also remember that the bazaar plays an important role in Iran's economy, but also in the 1979 revolution, the point that the bazaar entered the revolution was a turning point. So we're seeing that again. But immediately, I think it was on the second or third day that the students joined. And so this solidarity continued to grow. And very immediately, within hours, the main slogan of the protest became down with Khamenei, down with the dictator, down with the oppressor, be it the Shah or the mullahs. So the people are giving a very distinct message. It's, we want to end to this tyrannical rule, and we want to move forward in the 21st century to a secular democratic republic. We are not stuck between choosing between the current dictatorship and the past dictatorship. We're not going back in time, we're moving forward. We want to end to tyrannical rule in Iran, no matter what form and shape it comes in. So I think that is like the most important message that people are trying to give from inside of Iran. The message is there is a third option when it comes to Iran. The message is that the solution to Iran, it's not foreign war, it's also not appeasement. It's supporting the Iranian people because they have the capability and capacity to create change. You have to remember that the Iranian people have this experience. If you look in the past century in Iran, all the dictators have been brought in by foreign interest. Reza Shah was brought in by the British. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was brought in by the US and MI6. And Khomeini was also brought in by Western powers. That was decided in Guadeloupe that we want to bring him in. It was the Cold War then. They thought, well, he's religious, so against communism, this is good. Russia is bordering, USSR was bordering Iran and whatnot. So the Iranian people say, look, we do want support. We want solidarity. We want a firm policy on Iran, but we don't want foreign intervention. We have the possibility to create that change ourselves, but you can support us. How? Recognize our right to fight against this regime. Blacklist the IRGC, limit the Iranian regime's hands by doing so, hold them accountable for the killings and what they're doing, provide aid to us, provide internet, provide communication possibilities. Don't allow the regime to suppress us so easily, and don't turn a blind eye on what's happening on the ground. So it's very simple what the Iranian people are asking for. They're not asking for too much. They're not looking for boots on the ground. They don't think that, something's going to be brought in. They know that they have to pay a price. They know that no one's going to hand us freedom in a silver platter. And that's why you see this defiance and this sacrifice that they're making. People know the risk of going to the streets, but they still take that risk. And I think that's what's important. And that is what the regime fears most, because the regime knows that this kind of dedication and sacrifice is not something that it can easily suppress. And I think there's also one more key element here, and that is that, first of all, the regime knows that these people are organized. We have seen, just so you know, there's this strategy or tactic that we have had for over a decade now. The Iranian resistance in 2013 announced that it's necessary to create resistance units throughout Iran who will one day act as the liberation army for Iran. So people on the ground, because they're local, they can organize with one another, they could come together. And when they're not just individual people, when they're organized, they have that capability to stand in front of the suppressive forces. And that is what we're seeing right now. Like, for instance, in the city, in Ilam province, that was one of the cities that the regime started the massacre in during these protests. They attacked the hospital, they raided people's houses. But what was important was the youth, the rebellious youth there. They organized with one another. And so what they were able to do was they were able to liberate 2 adjacent towns in one night by just being organized and just making sure that they can get, because they knew the city, they knew the people, they were able to organize everyone and push out all the suppressive forces and take control of the city. And the scenes were beautiful, of people celebrating, because they knew that they were able to overcome this situation and they were able to move forward. So I think the Iranian regime understands that role right now, that organized structure that exists, and that is what they're trying to target as much as possible. And that's why they're having so many executions and killings, to be able to spread fear in society. They fear nothing more than the Iranian people themselves, because Iran is a very large country. You have to understand, Iran is very different geopolitically, geographically, with a lot of the other countries in the region. That's why troops on the ground are not going to help. It has to be the people of Iran who are able to create that change.
What do you hope happens?
Well, we hope that the Iranian people will persevere, and we are together. We're able to overthrow this regime and to be able to create a interim government, to be able to build a secular democratic republic. I think that we have the blueprint and which is outlined in the 10-point plan presented by Mrs. Rajavi, but also the plans put forward by the National Council of Resistance for the 6-month interim government, and then how the constitution will be written by a assembly, and then there will be free elections in Iran. So that is what people are looking forward to be able to create their destiny, to take destiny into their own hands and create the free Iran that we all yearn for.
What role are women playing in the demonstrations, and do they want specific to women?
Of course. Here's a little bit of background. Women play a significant role in the Iranian resistance and also in the fight for freedom in Iran. The NCRI, as I said, its president-elect is a woman, and 52% of the parliament in exile are women. In the MEK, the entire leadership of the movement are women, because we believe women are the force for change. And it comes from this mindset that women have been systematically suppressed in Iran for decades. But these women have so much hidden potential in them, but it's like a spring that has been suppressed so much. When you take that pressure off, it's going to really jump. It has that much potential in it. And I think that the Iranian resistance in its fight with this regime, they understood that if they want to fight this regime, because it's a religious tyranny, it's ideological, it's very important to be able to fight that ideology and that mindset. For 40 years now, the Iranian resistance has had women in power, and women's empowerment is really key, and women in leadership is very key in the Iranian resistance. And that has had its ripple effect on Iranian society. If you look at all the protests, both today and in previous years, you see women in the forefronts of this fight. Because really, the women of Iran, they have paid a grave price for freedom in Iran, but they also see that this is their only way out of this barbaric regime, misogynist regime. And so they have nothing to lose in this fight. So they are very dedicated, and they are always on the forefront. And they have this precedent and these, I always consider myself to be very lucky to be part of a generation that we had these role models in front of us. I remember even growing up in the US, my role model for women's empowerment was the Iranian resistance, because even in in society here in the US, even, or in the Western world, there's still a lot of glass ceilings when it comes to women and women in leadership, women empowerment. At a time that Hillary Clinton said women's rights are human rights at the UN Women's Conference back in 1996, at that time, the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, its entire leadership council were women. The entire leadership council were women. So they were already, women's empowerment was a big issue in this movement. And this is a new phenomenon that I think the world has yet to learn about. Hopefully, once Iran is free, there will be more time to discuss it. But I think that is one of the greatest accomplishments that Mrs. Mariam Rajavi has had. She has created a whole generation of female leaders who believe in equality. It's not an issue of putting aside the men to have women come into power. No, in fact, this is we see the emancipation of human beings here, both women and men, who are now seeing their whole capability and capacity, and that is very empowering for all of us. So this is what we are seeing in this movement, and you see it resonate on the streets in Iran and throughout the protests inside of Iran too.
If women were empowered in Iran and their potential was unleashed and they were no longer suppressed in the way they are now, what could we expect to happen?
I think that we will see Iran will flourish, but we will see a new phenomenon. And I think that it can have its effect on not only the region, but internationally, because we always need some kind of example to be able to follow suit with it. I think that Iran has always played a very important role geopolitically. If you look, when, for instance, Dr. Mossadegh nationalized Iran's oil, we saw how it spread in the Middle East. Now, just imagine in the same Middle East that women take their rightful position in society as equals, and they're able to, pursue whatever fields they want. They're able to, break through those barriers and move forward. I think that that will have a beautiful effect on the international community as a whole and the world. And I think that we will also see the growth of this unity and solidarity, and just, this cycle of women who are so dedicated that they are able to really make sacrifices for one another, for their country, and to be able to bring everyone together. So I think we will see a new value system in a way. I think we will see new humanitarian values flourish. And so we hope to be able to see that soon in the dawn of freedom in Iran.
Now, one of the ways that I perceive as women in Iran being oppressed is the restrictions on the way they're allowed to dress.
Exactly.
What will happen there? Because now I'm looking at you right now, and I've seen photographs of you, and you still wear your headscarf. You're dressed very conservatively. You're not up to Iranian standards, obviously, because your face is not covered. But when I see pictures of on video of Iran back in the 70s, before the revolution, there was Western style dress, there was Western style society. Is that something that Iranians want to move toward again, but under a non-theocracy?
I think you touched on a very important issue, and a good issue too. I think that what is most important is for people to have that freedom to make their own choices. Unfortunately, Iranians have experienced both. Under Reza Shah, the father of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, under his rule, he forced people to remove their scarves. And by doing that, he actually forced a great percentage of Iranian women back then into the house, because people were like, well, if I can't wear my hijab, I'm not leaving the house. And so he actually pushed them into the house that way. Khomeini did the opposite. He forced people to have the hijab, and that way pushed half of society into the house and said, a woman's role is to keep the house and be a mother or whatnot. What we have to say is, you know what? A woman is a human being. You have no right to dictate to any woman how to dress or how not to dress. It's their personal choice. It's their life. It's their bodies. It has nothing to do with you. So what is most important is to be able to first recognize that she is an equal human being as you, and you have no right to be judging how she should be dressed or how she should not be dressed. And I think that's really important, to have that freedom in Iranian society. And it's not only when it comes to dress code, it's to everything, every aspect of their lives. Women need to have equal rights with men, and we believe in equity, so more than just equality. And I think that is a center stone of this movement and what we want to build for a free Iran. So I hope one day soon we will have an Iran which this will not be an issue in. Do you wear a scarf or if you don't? It should be of no one's concern. Everyone should be able to choose how they want to dress and how they want to present themselves, because it's a personal choice and it's a personal matter, and no one should have that power to interfere in the decisions that you make in regards to your own life.
Now, you were born and raised in the United States of America, but your attire does not suggest that. Obviously, you dress the way you dress for a specific purpose. Why is that?
Well, that is a long story that we have, I think, 4 minutes. I'm not even sure I can explain that all in 4 minutes. But,
if there's maybe there's not a short answer to that question.
Yeah. The reality is that it was a personal choice that I made when I joined the Iranian resistance after, like, at the point that I was about 18 and a half, 19, because for me, this isn't just a piece of clothing. The message, first and foremost, is look at me as a human being before saying, oh, this is a woman or a man, because unfortunately, that's the lens that we have in society. That's what we grew up with. For me, before it being a religious decision, for me, it is a personal choice that I've made. And I think it has given me a lot of self-esteem. As I said, it's a personal story, so it doesn't fit in this time period that we have in today.
I was just curious, because in the United States, we're allowed to wear our pajamas to the convenience store.
Yeah, I know.
And my wife doesn't like it when I do it, but we're still allowed to do that. So I was just curious about your choice of attire and why you dress in a traditional type of way. One question, and it probably isn't a quick answer to this one either, but what happens in Iran if the current uprising fails and the regime retains its grip on the people?
The fight continues. The regime is in a very weak position right now. There's no way that it has reached a point of no return. But these protests right now began with the issue of the economy. In previous protests, whatever it was, the regime was able to have some kind of a leeway, give in a bit on that issue, and to be able to calm down society a bit with the suppression, but using both sides of this coin to be able to keep its grip on power. This time, there is no point of return. The regime can't stabilize the economy, so this situation is getting worse and worse and worse. On the other hand, with the killings, with everything that it's doing, people's hatred toward this regime is also getting more severe. It's in the final phase. Even if we don't succeed today, we will succeed, and this fight will continue till freedom in Iran.
You can learn more about Zolal Habibi and the mission of the National Council of Resistance of Iran at ncr-iran.org. Thank you to Zolal for spending some time with me in the Listening Tube. The Listening Tube is written and produced by yours truly. Copyright 2026. Thank you for putting your ear to the Listening Tube. Follow the Listening Tube at thelisteningtube.com. Shout out To some new parts of the world tuning in: Altoona and Council Bluffs, Iowa, Bogota, Colombia, Bear, Delaware, and Adelaide, Australia. Thanks, and tell your friends. I'm your host, Bob Woodley, for Thou ad infinitum.